We are going to take a look now at the representation patterns for software architecture because it's what we will be using for documenting architecture in our course. Architecture documentation is defined as any resource that a team uses to describe a system to outsiders. Here we can identify that any kind of resource, and I've seen many kinds of resources used for architecture documentation, from blackboards to wall-sized UML diagrams to boxes and arrows drawn on the floor. And this provides the context and the knowledge that there is no really standard for normalizing documentation on the architecture of a software system. There are multiple ways of documenting this. And why there is no standard? Why is it so hard to describe software architecture or to find a standard for software architecture? And we have to understand that software is abstract, and that means that it has no physical features. Software has form and behavior, but these constructs are abstractions as well. And abstractions can only be understood if we know the context of this abstraction, and that requires time. That's why when consulting, we normally reserve 1 week to really understand the architecture of a customer system, because it's always the case that multiple resources can be described in it, and not only resources that are written in a document or drawn in a blackboard, but as well uh, videos and conversation with existing developers. So a system evolves over time, and most of the cases the documentation is always outdated. And even though we have no standard for documentations, which options are available right now? And I listed 4 of them because these are the most used ones. There are many others, but it's, uh, it's really critical to read and narrow the options to the trending ones. And the first one is UML. UML was for a long time pushed to be the standard in the industry, but it has failed. One perception is that UML is too technical for non-developers, but not technical enough for developers. The C4 model is a visual aid for describing components and relationships. It's meant to be simple, and it's gaining popularity among developers. Uh, Architecture decision records are structured logs on text of architecture decisions. It's a great way to document the evolution of a system. This has been proposed by ThoughtWorks, and it's currently using Cognitet. It's the company that created Clojure. And the last one is the Arc42 template. This is a German company that defines a set of documents, is a template, to describe a system. I think in the last template they used C4. And this template is widely used in Europe, specifically by aviation companies. And we are going to be focusing ourselves into the C4 model because this is the model that we will be using in this course. Why? Because it's simple and it's straightforward. It's open source as well. It's flexible because we can document multiple systems and the features of these systems in a very simple way. And it's quite trendy because it's being used a lot in the software industry. So even if we use UML or any other uh, tool or aid for documenting architecture, which resources should we use? Uh, Using the source of People and Methodologies in Software Development from Alistair Cockburn, he classifies the documentation and the effectiveness of the documentation in 3 levels: high recall, moderate recall, and low recall. And recall means the retention level of the different people on the team of some type of documentation or resources for documenting something. And the highest recall level or recall rate has been for recorded architecture description. That means videos that are recorded of people describing the architecture and explaining what is the context of a system. And this in the past has been really helpful because we have now, I think in the current company, around 40 gigabytes of videos. But just by watching 3 hours, you are perhaps learning the context of the whole system and why some things are placed in some specific locations. And moderate recall is wiki documentation. This means if you have documentation in a centralized place that everyone can see and apport or contribute from time to time, it's better than to have a static document. Static documents is the worst type of resources that you can use to document architecture. And it has been proven a lot in different companies. So we are going to use now the C4 model, and I am going to proceed on the course with mostly videos. Why? Because videos have the highest recall level, that means the highest retention level on the learning process. If we do some assignments on the course, we will use written text because that's the way I can review it. I am not going to ask to any of you to do a video unless it's the final project presentation. But here are the most used representation patterns for architecture. I am not going to describe in detail C4 because a resource will be attached describing the model itself. Is the video is authored by the author of the C4 model. So I hope you enjoyed that one as well.